Have you ever been at work and felt that pull? You know, that tension between what everyone else is doing and what you feel you should be doing? It's this quiet internal battle we all face, fitting in versus sticking to our own compass. Well, today, we're going to dig deep into the science behind that exact struggle. So let's just start with the question that's at the heart of all this. Why is it that good, capable, well-intentioned people sometimes find themselves cutting a corner here or there, or maybe just looking the other way? The answer, as you can imagine, isn't simple, but it is absolutely critical for understanding how workplace cultures really tick. You know, in the world of organizational research, there's actually a formal term for this: deviant workplace behaviors. And it sounds pretty intense, right? But it's not just about the big, dramatic stuff. It's any voluntary action that kind of goes against the grain of the organization's rules and can end up harming the company or the people who work there. And this can cover a whole spectrum of things. It could be something that seems pretty minor, like, consistently showing up late or just phoning it in and not putting much effort into your work. But it can also be more serious stuff, like outright lying or even publicly shaming a coworker. These are the kinds of everyday actions that, when they add up, can really wear down a healthy work environment. So, what really drives these behaviors? To get some solid answers, we're going to dive into a really fascinating study that gives us some powerful clues. This particular research was done in Nigeria, and it focused specifically on faculty members at universities. All of this comes from the work of Kabiru Maitamakura. His research was published in the African Journal of Economic and Management Studies. Now, when he published this, he was a senior lecturer over at the Department of Business Administration and Management at the Federal Polytechnic Karanamada in Nigeria. Today, he's an associate professor of human resource management at Bahrain Polytechnic. Okay, so the study really zooms in on this incredible tug-of-war between two main forces. On one side, you have the power of group norms, what the people around you are doing, and on the other, you have the strength of an individual's self-control, which the research calls self-regulatory efficacy. Let's break down what those really mean. So the study splits group pressure into two different categories. First up, you've got perceived descriptive norms. That's a fancy way of saying it's what you literally see your colleagues doing. Maybe everyone leaves 15 minutes early on a Friday. That's a descriptive norm. Then you have perceived injunctive norms. This is all about what you believe your colleagues approve or disapprove of, whether they actually do it themselves or not. And here's the counterbalance to all that group pressure: self-regulatory efficacy. Think of it like your own personal internal thermostat. It's that belief, that confidence you have in your own ability to manage your actions and resist those outside forces, to stick with your own plan, even when the rest of the group is pulling you somewhere else. All right, so the study took these big ideas and put them to the test. How do these different types of group norms actually lead to deviant workplace behaviors? And what part does our own self-control play in all this? Well, the findings were surprisingly clear. The first major finding was that perceived descriptive norms, again, that's what people saw their coworkers actually doing, had a direct and really strong link to deviant workplace behaviors. To put it simply, if you see everyone else doing it, you are way more likely to do it too. It's basically monkey see, monkey do. But here is where it gets really interesting. The study found no direct link between perceived injunctive norms, what people thought their colleagues approved of, and what they actually did. This is a huge deal. It suggests that what we see happening right in front of us is a much, much more powerful driver of our own behavior than what we just assume other people think is okay. And this little summary just lays it all out so perfectly. The idea that what we see affects our behavior? Totally supported. But the idea that what we think is approved of has the same effect? Nope, not supported. It seems our actions are guided by other actions, not just by perceived opinions. But wait, the story doesn't end there. This is where it gets really good, because the study brought in that final crucial piece of the puzzle, our own self-regulatory efficacy. You can think of it like an individual override switch for all that group pressure. So that leads to the million-dollar question, right? What is it that determines whether we go along with the crowd or stand our ground? What allows some people to resist that powerful magnetic pull of seeing what everybody else is up to? The research discovered that for people with low self-regulatory efficacy, so a weaker belief in their ability to manage their own behavior, that pull from the group was incredibly powerful. If the team was bending the rules, these individuals were far more likely to get swept right along with them. But for employees on the other side of that coin, the ones with high self-regulatory efficacy, The picture was totally different. Their strong sense of self-control acted like a shield. The behavior of the group around them had a much, much weaker impact on their own choices. They could see what was happening, but they had the internal strength to choose their own path. And get this, we're not talking about a small effect here. When you combine the influence of group norms and the power of self-regulatory efficacy, these factors explained a whopping 57% of the difference, or variance, in deviant workplace behaviors among the people in the study. That is a massive finding, and it tells us just how critical these two forces really are. So, the big question is, what do we do with this information? I mean, this research isn't just some interesting academic exercise. It offers a really clear, practical roadmap for anyone who's trying to build a great team or a healthy workplace culture. The author, Kabiru Tamakura, says it directly. He says, given how much self-regulatory efficacy can act as a buffer against negative group influence, human resources managers really ought to consider it as a key criterion when they're hiring new people. So how does this actually look in practice? Well, first, it's about recognizing that an individual's character and self-control are just as important as the overall group culture. Second, companies can actually screen for this trait by using things like personality inventories during the hiring process. And the end goal? It's to build resilient teams full of people who can uphold high standards even when they're under pressure to do otherwise. Which kind of leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. In a world where we're constantly bombarded by social influence and group pressure, could it be that this inner strength, this self-regulatory efficacy, is actually the most important and maybe the most overlooked skill for really succeeding in the modern workplace? It's definitely something worth thinking about.